Hello, folks, and welcome to another one of our segments focusing on Healthcare Amplified. And we are super glad to have a fantastic woman with us today. We have Darlene Mahoney, and Darlene is representing an organization called SeniorLivingGuide.com. And it only took me 47 times to figure out exactly how to put that out there and to include that .com, because it matters at the end of the day. But Darlene is joining us. And again, is going to be attending the Healthcare Amplified Summit that we're down in Orlando, Florida, the 25th. Make sure you come down and check us out. And Darlene's organization is really focusing on helping individuals plan their future and what it's going to be look like, pivoting into some of the senior aspects, whether it be their living, whether it be some of the mobility aspects. And they're doing a fantastic job doing it, and I'm partnered with some very impressive organization. So I want to thank Darlene, first of all, for joining us. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have you here. And Darlene, tell us a little bit about, first of all, who you are and what your organization's doing, and then why Healthcare Amplified Summit is a really important aspect of growing your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I'm super excited. I'm just wondering why I didn't get a cartoon as well. So that was really fun. I really enjoyed that. So I am working specifically two separate aspects. We really want to provide content and resources to seniors and caregivers and their families. And so the SeniorLivingGuide.com podcast was introduced during COVID. And then the website that is a resource for seniors and their families and their caregivers to go and look for different areas that a senior might need that website's been around since I don't want to say almost 20 years.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been around for a long time, and it's been redone. It was very old school when I first started, and it's made so many improvements, and we're getting ready to revamp it again so that just provides, better quality information for our online users.
So Darlene, why a podcast? So you're dealing with an audience that, the demographic tends to be a little bit older. We don't think necessarily tech savvy. Mm-hmm. Why are you folks pivoting into a podcast sort of environment and driving that as one of your main paths forward for your organization?
Well, it's a subset. It's definitely, we're a revenue company. There's not a ton of revenue in the podcast, but really we have a very small team and a very passionate team. And we're very passionate about seniors, their families, getting them the information and resources they need on a daily basis. So the podcast was born out of basically COVID. During COVID, we really wanted to be able to still connect with people that weren't getting out. They weren't, going into stores, and they weren't doing the things that, they used to do. And then there's that fear factor that came along with it. So we created the podcast during that timeline in order to just give them resources on topics, whether it be healthcare, mental health, senior safety, and then, just a variety of different things. We have one on Zumba Gold. So, how you can do Zumba from your house, and it's specifically for older people. So, we really look for a variety of different topics, and then let the person listening pick what fits them best, what they're most interested in.
I think that's really important, because so I may be heading on to 55, which is kind of your target starting market. I'm going to say
I'm right there with you.
I'm a little targeted by that. I'm a little triggered, I'm going to say, because I looked at your website today and I went, 55, that's young. Drop that right now.
Yeah.
Young man. Anyway, but no, I love the idea of your podcast, because you're totally right. During that 2 years of COVID, we were all sequestered. And you had this thing where people in the group home world, people in senior living, young children were desocialized right away. It was almost right away. Especially in the senior community, they could not even go shopping for the majority, because one, they were cut off from those resources, like hopping into a cab. How do you hop into a cab when you can't be in a cab with someone else? And at the time, they had no working around that. And then on top of that, if in any way you're sick, immune compromised, you just don't want to take that chance. And there wasn't enough information going around to make those fears go away and make it feel a senior feel safe. Was there some stuff that you did specifically? Because you said it came out of COVID. Was there stuff that you guys were doing during that time that you felt was easing some of that fear and making that community and reaching out to them? Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I definitely hope so. We've had some really great feedback. I love getting reviews, and I will still occasionally get emails from people that listen that say this changed my life, or this was so helpful, or what have you. And that's the best part. That was the best part. That's better than any paycheck, anything you could ever get. It just makes you feel like, you want to change the world one podcast at a time, if possible. But when we first started out, we partnered with a healthcare system that's here in the state of Florida. Actually, it's in Titusville, called Parish Healthcare. And we had their doctors who were consistently the panelists. And so we would have different topics. And our very first topic, mind you, this is COVID, is navigating depression for seniors and their caregivers.
Right.
So because what was happening, it's not just that you're fearful of getting sick and you're isolated, but along with that comes depression. And the depression that we saw in the senior population significantly increased during that time frame. And it's very scary because they don't also necessarily get treated for it. And then sometimes people look at seniors and say they're old and they're supposed to be depressed. And that's not true. It's not true. And it's such a misnomer that's out there. Yeah. So it was just really addressing that. That was our very first podcast. And then clearly we went into, different things that are really important, like dementia is one of the biggest topics among seniors, especially as the numbers continue to grow in the number of diagnoses. And then also in much younger people, you're talking about 55, and we're starting to see more and more diagnoses of dementia in that generation, which scares me because I'm right up there with you, just like you said. And I want to say 55, is the new 35, right. But sometimes the noodle's not reading that, So
I love that. I think that's super interesting. It's totally true. So when I first started my career, I went into the kind of the elderly home care field. And I was doing some of the fun stuff, like bringing in pets. And I was like getting them to do like yoga and different things. That's kind of what I was doing in the beginning of my career. And I pulled away from it because it's hard to watch. Yeah. Because you become really close friends with these people. They're aging. They have sharp minds, and then all of a sudden they slowly start deteriorating. You see that. Yeah. And
it's so it is hard. I deal with it every day with you. It's painful sometimes, but you know what, James? It's every once in a while we stumble upon that golden retriever and I just watch her face smile, and it's worth it all.
Yeah.
That's weird. His mic got muted somehow. I don't know how that happened. Interesting. No, but seriously. So there was this one lady that I was working with that she was lovely, super smart. And then the one day I came in and she thought she was at a resort and was really trying to convince me how to get her out of the resort because she wanted to go home to her family, to her husband that didn't exist. Yeah. So what kind of shows are you doing to help that fear? Because like I have that fear too. Like Pat jokes around that my mind is slipping, but it really is. I forget things daily. So tell me a little bit about one of those shows that you did and how it would help someone who is worried about that.
Yeah, well, some of my life experience played into this as well. My dad passed away from dementia right before COVID. And it happened really quickly, and I didn't know how to navigate it. I was terrible at it. And it was something because I was in panic mode. I didn't know what to do. And my dad was my, I don't want to say daddy, but he was our caregiver. I was never his caregiver. And I was very respectful of him. I didn't want to get into his finances because I thought that was, not my job and my role. He's the dad, he's the parent, even though I'm grown. But so I've taken a lot of my experiences, good and bad, and interweave them in some of the topics of this podcast, because I'm hoping that the mistakes that I made, others won't.
Right.
And so they'll take cues from some of the things that I did. And that even some of that has to deal with my own guilt. We had a guest panelist at one time. She said, and I'll never forget it, guilt is a gift you give yourself. And she really changed how I felt about things, because I was struggling a lot with what happened.
Right.
Yeah. But one
sorry, go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry. I said, so one of our podcasts that we did that I'll never forget is we had a senior living community that has, I believe they have memory care as well, that's in Virginia, that was talking with us on a podcast. And we were just going to talk about, what you need prior to moving into senior living communities, like some of that kind of thing, a little more technical. And somehow we got into experiencing grief with those still living, which is what happens when you're taking care of someone that's losing their cognitive abilities.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, it hit me. It hit me on this podcast like a brick. And I honestly struggled not to lose it emotionally, because I didn't realize it, but that's what happened to me.
Right.
And I didn't know how to cope with it. And I honestly didn't know it was happening at the time it was happening. So I think that one podcast really resonates with, the question that you asked as far as how we address some of the things. Sometimes it's completely accidental, which make the best podcast sometimes, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I agree. Like, we get into that all the time here, and I'm very sorry for your loss. Like, both Pat and I have lost our fathers. I lost mine at a young age. Pat, unfortunately, very recently. And it's that whole idea of not having that net anymore. Because like you said, they're your superhero. They're your everything. And you have to dig into their finances as they kind of start slipping. And you have to become the parent, which is a weird. My mother had multiple sclerosis for 10 years. And she went from like a head nurse, top of her field, the person that anyone who knows her goes to. There were hundreds and hundreds of people who came to this woman's funeral. To in a wheelchair, barely could talk, and all she could do is cry when she saw me, because she knew what was going on but couldn't get anything out. And there is a grief to that. There is a grief to dealing with that, because you have to not show that you're noticing that something's happening to them, because you don't want to upset them, but at the same time you have to deal with the fact that this is no longer my parent. Like, this is now I'm taking on that role as a parent. So it's an interesting concept, and I love what you're doing to help kind of alleviate that. So the website that's kind of linked to you is all about, no matter where you are in the States, you press on a city, a town, and it will give you a list of resources. And so this is kind of like your parent company, right? That's where you're coming out of. Can you explain how that works for everyone, and why do you think it's important at like the young age of 55 to start planning in that direction? Shut up, Pat.
Oh, good grief. I mean, I think it's super important to plan in that direction just for sheer cost. If you're not everyone wants to age in place, which is a term used for staying home and growing old in your own home, your own space, or even with your family. But that's not possible. And we're more and more seeing that isn't, not necessarily that it's possible, but it's not something that people are doing as much anymore, because they physically can't, they're having cognitive issues, or they have family that's unable or unwilling to take on that role. It's a huge responsibility. So it's financially planning. So knowing the cost of senior living, it's incredibly expensive. I'm not going to lie and say that it's not. It's an expensive lifestyle, but it has medical aspects to it. So it's not just living somewhere, but there are those different things that do come with it, that can alleviate, your cost of living, what you would normally pay for like home care or something of that nature. But it's that planning. And then one of the most important things that I see is, we talked about 55, talking about senior living. Start looking, if you think you're going to move into, or it's a possibility, look where there's senior livings near you, visit them, and then pre-plan or what have you, and make your wishes known so that when you get ready to move into assisted living, you've already made those wishes. You've already made, whatever it is that's important to you, because all senior living communities are not the same. They have so many different aspects to them. What's important to one person may not be important to another, but you should get what's important to you, not what's important to your kids.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that that's key in the planning, not just the financial side, but say, hey, I don't care about having a pool. I don't care about having this, that, or the other. I want a place that's, more like home. Or if you do want all those luxury accommodations, definitely financially plan, but also make that known as well, and kind of scope out what's in your area for the future. So you can at least say, hey, I visited this. I already know I did like this. Now things change, but you've already have a baseline for what your needs are going to be and your wants.
So Darlene, when you are working with individuals, when they're contacting and looking through the resources that you folks are providing, what are some of the things that are, important to these people? What are some of the things that makes a fantastic, like a long-term care or a senior living facility? What are things that you're hearing probably through your research and of your clientele? What is important to these people as they're getting to that ripe old age of 55?
Right. So our website's built for a direct connection between a senior living community and the consumer, the senior, the caregiver. A lot of times it is caregiver or family that is doing that initial research, especially.
Right.
So we want to be able to provide them with as much information on the front end so they can make really good decisions before even walking into the door of a senior living community. So we strive for that. Each community, home health care, skilled nursing, memory care has details. It has pictures, it has floor plans. We have price ranges. So you can kind of build out your strategy before you start getting committed into taking too many tours, and then it gets confusing and that kind of thing. So I think that it varies. It's so much varies, getting back to your initial question on what people are looking for, because they sometimes really do want wine night. They want that bistro. They want meal delivery. They want private dining. So when they have family, they can have that space. And then some people, it's not as important. And there's different types of senior living communities that offer all kinds of different ranges of activities, travel. Some of them have travel plans where, they get together and they go on big trips, not just down to Chili's for lunch.
Yeah.
So,
no, I think what you're saying is super important, because you're absolutely right. It is a high expense. We're here in Canada, so we do have some publicly funded retirement homes, and we are notorious in Ontario for how awful they are. It's been in the news year in, year out. Every time there's a political change, they bring it up and dust it off and say they're going to make it better. And they rarely do. So if you do not plan, that's where you're headed, especially in Canada. I'm not sure what it's like in the States, but they're not treated equal. Like there are places like you're saying that I was fortunate enough that I kind of worked in both, where they're high energy. They have lots of activities daily. They take you out to different places like Center Island and museums and stuff that you will really enjoy. Do day trips. Sometimes they do trips down to Vegas or wherever. And then there's other times where you never leave the place.
Right.
You just stay inside, and you'll get to paint or make a clay pot or grow. You touched on something that really interests me, especially since, as Pat may have mentioned, I am losing my memory a little bit. He's not wrong. Have you done any podcasts on that? And I think it is so important, and that's what I've been looking into recently. There are ways and technology and advancements in science that have taught us that we can improve our memory. Have you done any podcasts in that area? And if so, can you tell me a little bit about it?
Oh, good gosh. We have tons of podcasts. So we do have podcasts that on diagnosing dementia and signs that you might have it, signs that your loved one might have it, or one that's called MCI, which is dementia. But then we also have had the Alzheimer's Association here that's been on our podcast. And there has been some we did one on, I can't think of the name of the medication, but it's the biggest sign of finding either, a cure or something to kind of stop it in its tracks than what we've ever had. And so they're really excited. I want to say it's called Lenquist. I could be pronouncing that wrong, so don't quote me on that. But it is, it has to be given to someone with very early diagnoses or very early stages of dementia or Alzheimer's for it to be effective. And it is expensive to do, but it's shown some really incredible results that they're taking and looking at paring down. So there's that. We've talked about food. Clearly, food and exercise can have a big difference on your cognitive abilities. I mean, you have to keep that brain going. And then one of the podcasts that we just recently did is hiring a cognitive coach, which is a thing.
Amazing.
And yeah. And
So what is a cognitive coach?
It's a cognitive coach, which is someone that can work with people that have already been diagnosed, or if you're just getting older, it could be a really good use of your money if you have, some disposable income. But it's someone that comes and works with you, and there is a method to the madness of the different activities. I think it's like 30 to 45 minutes for like 2 to 3 times a week. Wow. It's not a long period of time, and that person will work with you. And it's the same person typically. It depends on what company you hire, and they'll typically work with you consistently. And they're doing it also virtually. So you don't have to have someone coming into your home every week or what have you, just kind of depends, but it helps the cognitive abilities. They've found you stay much sharper, much longer with utilizing a cognitive coach.
I love that. I think that's such a unique space for the fact that, again, in this digital world that we're looking at, and again, it goes to the podcast realm that you've dove into. And again, back to Healthcare Amplified, is that we now have tools. We have the digital technology world that we live in that is able to help our loved ones and really tap into that. And you folks have become a real resource, a target-rich environment for being able to ground yourself in that professionalism and bring on these professionals. So now that you're going to be attending Healthcare Amplified in Orlando, first of all, why are you attending? Like, I think that kind of goes to the broad question of what is Healthcare Amplified potentially is going to bring to you. And then all of you out there, you can click that. That is one of our affiliate links. You can check that out. We are going to be down. We will be maybe having a glass of wine with the beautiful Darlene, and we will see what they're doing. And but again, back to my question of why Healthcare Amplified for your organization.
Yeah. So we wanted to really share what we have been doing, how we've been able to do it. And then from a business standpoint, we've definitely been able to monetize what we are doing because, you got to feed the fam, right? So it's something that I think it's really good to get out there and share. And talk about also, connecting the older population with healthcare options and resources. We don't do a single podcast that I don't say, I need additional resources. So you've been a great panelist, but what else? We've talked about this. I did one today where we talked about different safety devices that you could use, and he mentioned like the Birdie and different things. Where can you get them? Can you get them at Amazon? So every time that we talk about something, not just saying, oh, here's the problem, here's the issues, here's, life is, not so amazing. As you get older, everything starts to go. And you can get cranky real easy and have a negative outlook on life. So we want to provide people with resources where they don't have to be like that. They should still be like getting out there, enjoying their lives. My mom said something to me and it's resonated me with so much. My mom died from ovarian cancer, like right before my dad was diagnosed with dementia. And one thing she would say to me, she was a go getter. I mean, she did not stop. You could not stop that woman. She loved living life outside the home with her family, seeing and going and doing and just experiencing the world. And she said to me, I'm in my late 60s and I feel, even, fighting ovarian cancer, I feel like I'm in my 20s. And then I look in the mirror and I don't recognize myself because I don't feel like the person I see. And I think that's not abnormal with most seniors. And we don't respect that.
No, I think that's totally true. Like with the friends I have, a little bit older, right around my age, we all kind of feel the same way. Like I just, when you hit the mirror, you're like, whoa, I look a little bit older than I should. But you still have that energy, you still have that drive. And as long as you do, then you will do well in the older care of your life. I think it's so important to build. I always talk about mental health with any age. I don't care if you're 4 years old or 100 years old. Community is the number one way you're going to have a strong mental health. Getting out there and doing stuff. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you start a knitting club, if you just like go talk about books, you go and have coffee, get out of wherever you are and go do it. Though you can't be sit in the retirement home and, gather together. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying get out of the space that you're in and go somewhere else and be in a community where you activate those synapses in your brain and you have that higher level of thought and you feel seen, which is the most important thing. I want to get back to Healthcare Amplified a little bit here. So Healthcare Amplified is basically about podcasters, right? That's the big drive in the healthcare space, which is lovely. How do you think it's going to help your brand? What are you like? I understand you're talking there, but how is it going to help your brand grow? Because that's a big drive for Healthcare Amplified. That's one of the reasons Soaring Prophets is going down there is because we know it's going to grow our brand. We're sold already, but the people watching aren't sold. So tell us, how do you think it's going to grow your brand? How did you sell it to the people above you to go?
Well, I didn't really have to sell it to my team or anyone above me. I said I'm going, and that was kind of the end of it. So we'll,
I did the same thing.
I like it. Yeah.
So, and part of it is there's, I don't want to say there's no advertising that's bad advertising, because clearly that's not true. But I want to get out there to the people that are there about our podcast and about our website and about the resources that we do provide seniors on an everyday basis, and what that means to them, how important reaching seniors, providing them information, no matter if it's just general resources or senior housing resources. So to get out there and share that message with folks that are attending is really important as well, because they can share it and they can, I always say, if you enjoyed this podcast, if you found it helpful, share it with someone who needs it.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, I think that goes to the exact point about James, what he was talking about, is that community centered, right? And it doesn't matter what you do in business, is that there's always that referral base. And before, when we were kind of talking in the green room before we went live here, you talked about trying to become the Yelp, right? Is that there's this opportunity that you can spread a message and that you can have that referral based business, which I can think of nothing better than finding a fantastic community, senior living environment for myself. And if I can get 8 or 10 of my buddies and we can come in here and we can all live together. Well, maybe James, you'll probably be gone by then, but if we
shots fired,
you are bad.
I'm really sticking on the old gig today, but I think there's
goodness.
nothing better than creating a really, really conducive environment for myself, my family, my friends. It sounds like you folks are this one-stop shop opportunity where you're talking about appliances, you're talking about the living conditions. What else are you folks digging into now? What is the next move in the SeniorLivingGuide.com? Nope, senior. I told you.
Senior living. You got it. You got it. You get brownie points.
There we go. I'm working.
Yeah. So we just continue to improve really the website, the functionality of the website to provide better information so that, we want someone that it does want to pull and does have this amount of money to spend, that they only get seen the things that are on a website that fit that criteria versus giving them, everything under the sun and then letting them dig through it. So that's our next step that we're looking forward to in 2024.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. It's always good to look to the future. I'm really looking forward. Sorry, I was a little lost there because I was trying to figure something out. So I am going to go back to the Healthcare Amplified because that's kind of what we're trying to drive here, trying to make awareness about it. Because I think if you're a podcaster out there, switching gears a little bit, we'll get away from the elderly people like myself. But I think if you're in the podcaster kind of field, the networking side of it is super important. And the community that we build is also super important. Like you were talking about your guests. When you have guests on, especially if you have guests like yourself who are podcasters, not only do you get resources and other maybe guests and other ideas and, maybe you get a fancy little cartoon to start your little podcast because we have one,
Yes.
or two handsome guys come on your show.
There you go.
You're constantly learning and growing. Are you expecting that to be like some of the connections you make at this Healthcare Amplified?
Oh, 100%, 100%. I have most of my panelists, my guests that I've had on, I've met. A lot of them have reached out to me and say, "Hey, I have good content. I have this, that, or the other," or I'm really looking for certain subjects. And I have seniors talk to me all the time, and caregivers talk to me all the time that I just know in my circle, and they just. I don't want to say they come to me for advice, or they talk to me about a lot of things that are going on because I feel like I've had some experience, and I send them podcasts, say, "Hey, listen to this. Maybe this will help you." But what is bothering them? What's happening in their world? And then I'm like, you know what? We've got to find a panelist that's an expert in this area. That's a great resource. So it's 100% about building connections. Sometimes it's just someone that I've seen on LinkedIn, and I reach out and say, "Hey, listen, I've seen you've written this book. I would love to read your book. And then would you be interested in joining me on a podcast?" So it really just depends. You're really looking for quality resources, quality panelists, and then just connecting on, to me, you network. I can, we do podcasts so we can talk to walls because we just love to just talk and have conversations, even if that wall is, not really talking back. And so when you're doing things like the Healthcare Amplified, there's just so many people that you can meet. It just expands your world.
Yeah. Well, just leading into it, what we're doing right now is we're kind of interviewing, we talked to Sabrina, who is one of the 3 people that brought Healthcare Amplified to Orlando. And we're talking to them and learning more and more about the space. And last night we talked to the wonderful Zach, and man, this guy, he just is one of those people that can, he knows how to talk. He knows more. He's forgotten more about sales than Pat and I have ever learned. And after the show was all over, we were done. He started giving us advice on our 30-second pitch on what do we do when we go to Orlando. He literally went through and helped us get ready because we've never been to a podfest, right? We don't know what to do. We don't know how to start. We don't know how to connect. We're pretty good at meeting people, talking people, doing all that stuff. But he's like, you know what? The way you guys pitch, you're too long-winded. There's too much information. People are going to stop listening after a while, that kind of thing. But the whole point is that every time we meet someone, we learn more information, we grow, our podcast becomes better, more solid, and we get more traction in the YouTube world. And we've been really digging it and enjoying it. I really have loved having you on, Deborah. I look forward to meeting you down in Orlando. I think, guys, if you're out there and you want to meet the wonderful Deborah, you come on down. Sorry, Darlene. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. See?
And you worried about SeniorLivingGuide.com.
See?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right.
If you want to come down and meet the wonderful Darlene. Oh my God. I don't even know what to do. Pat, take over for a second.
You're all good.
No, it's a pleasure to have you. And again, it's going to be a great opportunity to go down to Orlando, sit and enjoy some of the fantastic speakers and guests that are coming down. And we're hopefully going to get to bend your ear a little bit. We'll enjoy some maybe the after party aspects that are going on. Because from what I understand, there's going to be some great events that are going on. Those of you that are out there, check out the QR code, the Healthcare Amplified QR code here beside us. That is our link. And again, come on down and check us out. And especially Darlene. Darlene, again, I want to thank you. Sometimes known as Deborah, but most of the time, Darlene.
AKA, I never loved my name growing up. So I'm open.
So it could be anything. By the end of it, it could be Ashley. We'll end up,
I take that. Yeah.
There you go. But Darlene, thank you so much. And again, I want to ask you one more question, and then I want you to take us out of this, is that as in the community that you're working within, and you look around at people that are aging, what is a piece of advice? I guess would be the best way to put this. What is a piece of advice for someone like myself, who, again, I lost my father recently. My mother, she currently lives with me, took her in during COVID after my father passed away. What is some advice that you could give to somebody? And, other than just jumping on SeniorLivingGuide.com and checking out all of the resources, SeniorLivingGuide.com. I got it. James down there in the corner. But what are some of the things that you can apply to that kind of situation and giving them some forethought to be thinking about for the next few years?
So if you're talking about the younger generation.
Yeah, someone who's super young like me.
I know you're just like
baby face.
So yeah,
that's it. I like
it. So with me, I think it's so important that we see seniors and older people as people, people with feelings, people with desires, people that still have a desire to live their life and not look at them as, something you set in the corner. And I think we really also, especially your generation, and even, now I'm showing my age as well, my kids' generation is teaching their kids the same level of respect 100%. And the same level of consideration. Just because you're old doesn't change you as a human being.
Right.
And I think I don't know what's going on in our society these days, but I feel like we're losing that overall respect. I had such great respect for my grandmother and my great grandmother. It would never occur to me not to be respectful to them. And I think we're just kind of meandering right now.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely true. You make it that is absolutely true. We've had a couple of podcasters that are in the senior living kind of idea. And one lady talked about how, there are several women and men that sleep in their car because they have no other place to go because their family just let them go by the wayside. I have met so many older people that have more to give, have experience, just because maybe they don't know how to put a podcast together. They have an experience that can aid in that podcast. They have an experience that, in life and growth and personal just mindfulness that transcends anything else. And for us to disrespect them and what we've been doing in the last little while in a me society is awful because we put them in corners. We forget about them. Out of sight, out of mind. That's what we want. That's where we're at right now in society. Let's put them in a home. We'll forget, I'll go visit them every couple of weekends. That's what I do. And then I'll put it on social media and I'll tell everyone I'm doing it. So everyone gets to see that I'm a good grandson. But, you kind of miss that idea of they should be in our house. There's no reason why they shouldn't be in our house. Now, I get it's hard. Like I said, my mother had multiple sclerosis issues in a wheelchair, and it got very difficult for my father as the years went on. And so he did have to end up. There is a moment. There is a time that you have to move into a medical services kind of field. But it's not right away.
Right.
And I love what you're doing. I love what you're saying. And Darlene, I really can't wait to meet you in Healthcare Amplified and profiteers out there. Whether you have a podcast, whether you just want to be in the sunshine for a little while, maybe have some orange juice, mimosas with the profiteer boys. Come on down, scan the code, buy a ticket, come see us. If you come see us and go, hey, I love your show, we'll get you on it. We'll do a little interview. We'll have a chat, and maybe we'll sign something, or Pat will sign something. And definitely, I said this on every podcast, Pat's going to have a shirt off. So I'm just saying, if you come down,
bonus,
no
is that a bonus?
No shirt.
Depends on how you want to look at it, really.
Profiteers out there, let's heal our minds, bodies, and souls together. I absolutely love you all.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I love it.
Absolutely, Darlene. And again, it'll be a pleasure. Looking forward to meeting you. And again, Darlene, National Sales Director, SeniorLiving.com.
Formerly known as Deborah.
Or Deborah. Yeah.
Or Ashley, Deborah.
Helen.
Whatever.
Yeah. Darlene, I apologize. Come on, check us out, and we will see you down in Orlando shortly. Let's make some money together, folks.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.